Welcome to In the Know. I'm your host, Dan Reith, and we continue with our series of interviews with the candidates for the 2021 federal election for Elgin-Middlesex-London. This episode, we are visiting with Katelyn Cody, the candidate for the NDP party. Before we get started, some housekeeping items. All candidates for the riding of Elgin-Middlesex-London registered with Elections Canada have been invited to participate in these interviews. All the interviews will be approximately 30 minutes. All candidates will be asked generally the same questions about themselves, their party leader, and their party platform. Our purpose is not to offer the candidates an opportunity to merely spout talking points, but to help you get to know the candidate on a more personal level and to better understand them so you can make a more informed decision on voting day on September 20th. Katelyn, welcome to In the Know. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Now, is this your first foray into running for public office?
Yes, this is my first dabble in politics. And so far it's been invigorating. I feel like I truly am constantly running. I get why they call it running for office.
So I can't help but ask why.
That's a good question. There's a few different answers. The easiest being I can speak on behalf of many people, I think, when they're not always impressed with the way our government runs or the decisions being made on our behalf. And the easiest way I know to make the change there is to participate. If I want something done on a larger scale, then I need to get involved. And so if I'm not necessarily 100% behind our politicians, then I myself should become a politician and help make the change right where they are working.
What is your unique ability or your superpower?
Oh, I think that I'm a very compassionate listener. I like to hear others more than I like to hear myself. When or if elected, my plan is never to speak on what's important to me. It's to speak on what's important to my constituents, which involves a lot of time getting to know other people and their issues. So I would say listening well is probably my superpower.
Considering your superpower or your other powers, why are you better able to serve the constituents of EML versus any of the other candidates?
With my ability to listen, and I have a very large heart. I have a really good understanding of rural communities. And I am young, which is not against me in this case. I have way too much energy and passion to give up on what I believe in. So because I have the time and because I have the youthful energy behind me, and because I'm willing to sit and listen to the hard problems, I'm not going anywhere until I get answers for people who need them, and I find solutions for those who have asked.
There's been much said recently about the need for all Canadians to be vaccinated. The incumbent government has said that they would mandate federal employees to be double vaccinated to come back to work. But nothing's been said specifically about elected MPs. So I thought it's important to ask, are you double vaccinated? And do you support all sitting MPs to be double vaccinated to be in the House?
I am double vaccinated. Actually, the NDP made it a priority and a requirement that all candidates be fully vaccinated to run. And I absolutely believe that it is our duty as leaders to set that example, to make that informed decision and be vaccinated, so that others can see that this is what we need to do to move forward as a country to protect our neighbors and protect ourselves.
What about the MP who's elected who may have a religious or other issue around being vaccinated? After all, they're voted to represent the interest of their constituents. How should they be accommodated?
Yeah, I think that it's a case-by-case basis. We definitely need to respect and understand where other people are coming from, and they will have their reasons. I'm assuming in that situation, it would be very similar to going to public school. There are certain vaccinations you need to get to go to public school, and if you are exempt from those, you have a written statement as to why you are exempt. So I would treat it the same way with politicians, as you may have that reason, and it just needs to be noted in your employment file as to why.
If we were to meet 5 years from today, what would have to have happened in your life over the next 5 years for you to consider yourself happy and successful?
5 years from today. To be happy and successful, I would have to have a support system around me that wanted to be there. People who have chosen to stand by me and support me, and love me, that I love in return. Community is truly everything to me, and that starts right in the home. So that is a huge factor to what I define as my success, are people that choose to support me. I think that also, I decided to go back to school this year. So continuing my education further is something that also is on my success list. So continuing to grow and educate myself on issues, on different employment opportunities, on different diplomas, perhaps, just continually growing.
Let's move on to our section on the candidate's assessment of your leadership. Looking specifically with Jagmeet Singh as leader of the NDP party. The NDP party platform says, New Democrats will always stand against hate in all its forms and work to end systemic injustice. Mr. Singh is quoted as saying that Canada is a place of racism and that Muslims are not safe in this country. Do you believe that Canada is as racist as Mr. Singh claims?
I do. I believe that we have systemic issues that specifically relate to education and understanding. I believe that fear is fed by misinformation and doubt. And I think through understanding, we bridge that gap and hopefully eventually remove the racism that is within our country. But I absolutely agree with the leader.
If you're therefore to apply the collectivist notion that he's put forward, that would therefore suggest that you're racist. We're all racist. Therefore, I think it's important to ask the question, do you perceive yourself as racist? And have you ever committed a racist act?
I think as a white person, I absolutely have committed a racist act. There are things that I have stated earlier that I want to continue growing and learning. And there have been statements that have come out of my mouth that I was unaware were unintentionally offensive. And so through education, I can adjust that and fix it. But in that moment, without intending to be, they would have been racist statements. So I think that it's recognizing that privilege and being willing to educate yourself and move forward to be a better person.
Should that disqualify you from running?
No, I don't think that wanting to be a better person should ever disqualify someone. Being able to make sincere apologies, to be able to grow and learn, that's what decides a good leader. If someone was not willing to learn or move forward or apologize, I think in those situations, that could potentially be a reason to disqualify someone from being in leadership.
What have you done personally to reduce, mitigate, or stop racism within your community?
That is a good question. I can say within, close circles, I always call out comments or jokes to make sure people are understanding where it comes from and as to why it's not funny or appropriate, or as to why it is offensive. I think that starting small, I've done that in educating those close to me and promoting those around me to further educate themselves. I have not actively done anything larger in the community, though.
Okay. On that note, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. We are visiting with Katelyn Cody, candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London, representing the NDP Party of Canada. Stay tuned. Welcome back to In the Know. I'm your host, Dan Reith, and we continue our series of interviews with the candidates for the upcoming federal election. In this episode, we're visiting with Katelyn Cody, candidate for the NDP party for Elgin-Middlesex-London. Katelyn, let's talk about the NDP party platform. I have had the opportunity and privilege to read all the party's platforms as they are currently published on the web. And I must say that there is a real close comparison between the NDP party and the Liberal platform. If I were a voter who was uncertain whether to go red or orange, how would you distinguish for me the difference between the two?
The NDP, actually, I had a constituent last night who described the NDP as a party for the underdogs. And I think that that's a really good way to describe the NDP. Our slogan is fighting for you. And I believe that all decisions made by the party, by our leader, Doug Mead, is a decision to improve the quality of life for Canadians. So when you're trying to kind of pick between parties, I would personally pick 3 topics that are really important to you and then read through the parties and see who hits best what you're looking for. But at the end of the day, like I said, the NDP is the one that's coming in for the average Canadian and those that might be below the middle class.
So for you as a candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London, what are the 3 key planks of the platform that you think are most important to residents of Elgin-Middlesex-London? Can you explain them to us, tell us how they apply, and how would you ensure that those planks actually become policy?
The 3 points for me in the platform are childcare, the housing, and then wages. So the NDP is really looking at a $10 a day national childcare cost. And with that, increasing the number of available spaces, as well as increasing the wages for childcare workers. By increasing space for your child, it will reduce wait lists. Many families are currently waiting months to get into childcare places. And then that $10 a day really makes it more accessible for a larger variety of families. Right now, there are people in our country who can't afford to get a job because they can't afford to pay for childcare. So getting that down significantly will increase the number of workers that we are able to have in Canada. And then looking at wages, the NDP is a big supporter of a living wage. They specifically have wanted to increase minimum wage at least to above $15 per hour to start, and then increasing with inflation, and looking again at what the cost of living is to what we are paying our employees. And then housing. Personally, I can speak to this as a recent graduate. The housing crisis in this country is ridiculous. It's hard to pay for rent. There are bidding wars between rent. It's nearly impossible to, afford a house. So the NDP wants to look at bringing in lower cost housing options, and by bringing in the more units, they're also going to waive the GST and HST federally for the cost of building those units, which would make them more affordable longer, and also providing jobs in various areas by building those spaces, so the construction jobs.
Let's talk about daycare first. $10 a day, isn't that the same policy we're hearing from the Liberal Party?
It is. Yeah, so they are also
looking at that. How is yours a superior choice?
Well, one, I'll say parties can have similar policies, and they may not be one better than the other, but you have to look at all the parties' policies, not just one. I will say I support the NDP's childcare policy more, specifically because it has a more holistic approach. It's not just decreasing the rate of childcare. It's doing that, providing more spaces, and then also increasing the wages for childcare workers. We can't just open up more space for children without looking at how important that care is and really making sure there's a community that fosters that child and creates a safe space for them.
With respect to wages, you said that we need to have a living wage. It needs to be above $15 an hour. For a few years now, we've heard it said that $15 an hour is like the minimum number. But I've heard that number from several jurisdictions across Canada, from the United States. How is it that $15 an hour is the living wage for all of North America, when costs of living are so variantly different, even simply from West Lauren to London, London to Toronto? How is it that 15 is this magic number that's going to solve all the problems and resolve poverty?
I don't think it will. I think that the $15 minimum is more of an average. That's where we need to be starting. That's our baseline. But it definitely is not where the living wage mark is for every single region across the country or even across our riding. So I don't have an answer to what the actual solution is right now, but I agree that it's not the magic number.
Okay, that's cool. Because you always hear that number tossed out, and I've always scratched my head and thought, well, how is that possible? That it's the same? Because I would think that $15 an hour in Toronto generates a far different lifestyle than what would get in, say, West Lauren for $15 an hour. So,
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned housing. Housing has been that thing that's been forgotten about. It's been promised and promised and ignored and promised and ignored. Why now does Jagmeet Singh's NDP party have the political will to make sure that affordable housing actually happens?
I like to remind people that when you provide a house, when you build a house, you're not just providing a shelter, you're providing a space for a family. So people can't thrive. We can't have the best quality of life. We can't have a safe space to decompress at the end of the day without that house, without having that home, that place to call our own. It's a sense of pride. It's a sense of, it's a place where we can do homework with our kids. We can have family night dinner. It's more than just a building. And so I think that the NDP is really seeing, again, that holistic view that we want to create a better life for all Canadians. We want to improve healthcare, specifically mental health care. We want to improve the quality of work for our employees. In building a better society, we have to start at the home and look at what we're providing people when they first wake up in the morning and when they go to bed at the end of the day.
How do we pay for all this housing that's needed across Canada? Okay. Affordable housing is not exclusively an Elgin-Middlesex-London problem. It is everywhere. How do we pay for it?
That is a really good question that I cannot break down. I don't have the education to fully speak to that. It would involve some taxes, I'm sure. But when the NDP looks at taxes, I do like to remind people, specifically the taxes we are looking at implementing during this platform are targeting the super wealthy. So looking at those people who are billionaires or well into the millionaires. So hopefully reallocating those kinds of funds would definitely partially fund the housing.
That's been tried before, redistribution of wealth, and it's never really succeeded. Why will it succeed under NDP and Jagmeet Singh?
We are fighting for you. The NDP and Jagmeet Singh are truly here for the underdogs, like we've discussed. And we are a party about publicize. I can't think of the word right now. It's the opposite of privatizing things.
You are going to turn public, nationalize.
Nationalize. Thank you. That is the word we're looking for. So the NDP is about nationalizing things, right? So I think that by not just redistributing, but by nationalizing and really boosting the economy that way, in theory, things should kind of pan out. There are people that are more educated when it comes to economics than I am that can kind of describe why that plan will work.
Okay. So in theory, it should, but not often do theories actually fall into practice. Not always do theories turn into practical benefit.
Not always.
Okay. I'm curious, you didn't pick climate as one of your top three. So I want to ask you some questions about climate in the NDP platform. And it spoke about a new civilian climate corps would mobilize young people and create new jobs supporting conservation efforts and addressing the threat of climate change by undertaking activities such as helping restore wetlands, planting the billions of trees that need to be planted in the years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does that mean? Is this going to be like the Peace Corps for environment? Will these be paid positions? Will it be volunteer? How is the climate corps going to function?
I don't know how a climate corps will function. I was not kind of given information on how that will look, aside from mobilizing people and getting that work done, having an organization that does the work to allocate and delegate people to get the jobs done, to really propel us forward as a country with our climate action. But I can't speak to whether or not it'll be employed or volunteer work.
Do you think that makes sense to create this civilian climate corps?
I think it's a fantastic idea. We definitely need something that moves us forward, that's getting things like the trees planted, that's holding us as a country accountable, that's coming up with new ideas on how to reduce the effects of climate change.
I also took note in the platform, there was a section speaking to taking better care of each other, better access to quality home care and long-term care facilities. And Mr. Singh has been very outspoken against for-profit long-term care facilities. Specifically, he spoke out against one of Canada's largest for-profit long-term care operators, Revera, during a recent stop in Mississauga. Given Revera is in fact owned by the federal government through the Crown Corporation Public Sector Pension Investment Board, isn't it a little rich that he's criticizing a for-profit operator as being ineffectual when, if in fact they are, the federal government under Prime Minister Trudeau and or any previous government could have taken steps as a sole shareholder to make things better?
Yes. What I can say about that is it wasn't an NDP government. So the NDP is coming down hard on for-profit care. When you add profit to care, it reduces the personal and it changes the quality. So yes, something should and could be done by the government, but that is a choice that previous governments have not made.
So when you indicated that the NDP is all about nationalization, would you therefore suggest or support the notion that an NDP government led by Mr. Singh would compel the Crown Corporation to divest itself of all the Revera because it's for profit and therefore convert it to nonprofit, thereby potentially taking revenues out of a pension fund?
I can't speak to what the party would do in that instance. It's a very kind of isolated idea, but I would support looking at how to change the way that that's currently operating.
Okay, we're down to our last 2 minutes, so this is your opportunity. I know it goes quick, doesn't it? We're down to the last 2 minutes, so I want to give you the opportunity to give your closing statements to our viewers and to effectively help convince our viewers as to why Katelyn Cody and the NDP are the right choice for them on September 20th.
Well, I think you need to educate yourself. Read our full platform, read some highlights on our Facebook page. But at the end of the day, I'm not a bad choice. I'm passionate and I'm here for you. I'm all about locals supporting locals and building a community and moving forward. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be sticking at community events and really focusing on what we can do as a riding to keep moving forward and keep fostering a healthy space from all corners of our riding. It's not a small riding. So take a look at the platforms. I support NDP because they're fighting for the underdog. I've said it a lot, but that's why I chose them. And I think that it's all about educating yourself on who's right for you.
Very good. Katelyn, on behalf of myself and Rogers, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we wish you all the best of luck on your campaign. I know that it's a lot of hard work, and I applaud anyone willing to take the time away from their family and their job to commit as you have and the other candidates have to attempt to better make change within our community. So thank you very much, and best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you.
To our viewers, if you're looking to learn more about the NDP platform, you can go to ndp.ca and click on platform, and everything is right there for you to see and learn. As Katelyn suggested, it's the best place to start. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the election is September 20th. Advanced polls open tomorrow, and do get out and vote. It is your right, it is your opportunity, and it is the best way to help Canada to maintain and become a better place. Thank you, Katelyn, and thank you to our viewers. Now you are in the know. Take care.